is real. So there's a lot of people in our neck of the woods that focus on short-term rentals, where the rest of us are rolling eights the hard way. These cats are making like what, you close 2 or 3 deals a year, and you do no paperwork because the builder does all the work for you, and you're making like $80,000 check or something. It's ridiculous. So do you have that here in Tampa? Is that a thing? Builders don't do that out here, right? Okay, so that's maybe around the Mouse's house in Mickey Mouse. So out here, you guys have a lot of coastal properties, right? So we'll talk about short-term rentals and how to do market research on short-term rentals so that you can bring clients for winners and or invest in yourself. Any of you personally interested? Are you here just by show of hands for your own personal interest in investing in short-term rentals? For those of you, and then how many of you here for clients mainly? And then both. Both. Okay. So Airbnb is a really sticky, sexy topic, right? But 95% of Airbnbs. But 95% of Airbnbs don't pencil. When I say 1% rent multiplier, it's kind of a rule of thumb gauge, like very quickly thumbnail, does this long-term rental property make sense financially? 1% rent multiplier means it's a question or an assessment that the monthly rent is that at least 1% of the purchase price. So about a $200,000 property I'm buying is the monthly rent $2,000, right? That makes a really good long-term rental for a lot of people. Now those are hard to find today, but on the short-term rental side, the language we use is the 15 to 20% gross, meaning is the income you can make from that short-term rental property on a yearly basis at least 15 to 20% of all the money it took to buy the property if you pay cash. Right? So if you buy a $500,000 property, you put $100,000 into it, put $50,000 into the property, that's $650 total. Are you making at least, what is that? 2 years in, 60,
15 to 20% of those 600K.
Yeah, 15 to 20% of 650,000. You know the math, right? So is it going to make at least that much? Because if it doesn't make that much, then you're going to be at most likely a negative cash flow situation, or your expenses are going to be 80% and 20% is what you actually keep, right? So we're going to break down how do you look at short-term rental properties and do the market research on them so that you and your clients aren't buying losers. And we have a long-term rental management company as well as a short-term rental management company. Interestingly, we get so many referrals from agents who sell their clients a short-term rental property that doesn't work. And then what ends up happening is, imagine buying a $400,000 property you're going to put on Airbnb, and maybe you won't hire a short-term rental management company to do that for you. But regardless, if it doesn't pencil out, you can't make the thing work, what do you end up doing? And you're carrying it with, what, a $3,000 mortgage or whatever? What do you have to do? Well, you sell it, or you give it to a long-term rental management company and say, hey, can you get a 12-month lease in place to cover my carry on this thing? Right? So we're getting referrals from a lot of property owners who don't know how to make their short-term rental property work. And now we have to get rid of all the furniture and finishes and decor and so forth at pennies on the dollar, right? Because long-term rental tenants have their U-Haul trucks behind them. They have their own furniture, so they don't rent properties that are fully furnished like a vacation rental. So now you got to get rid of all the stuff in the house and then put a 12-month lease in place just to get the owner to carry the cost of the property, or they have to sell it. Right? None of us want to be in that position because you're not getting referrals from investors that do that. Right? So how do we know if a short-term rental works? There's a 3-legged value stool to be sure that a short-term rental property works. Only one of those legs you can control before the closing. And if you get that one wrong, I don't care how well you do the other 2, it's not going to work, right? The first leg, which is what we're here to talk about, is the market research and the analysis. The second leg is what kind of experience are you creating in that unit through the decor, the finishes, the theming, and so forth. Is it a wow experience, or is it just a good experience that forces you to compete on price? So the experience, decor, finishes, furniture, that's the second leg. Then the third leg, you guys wanna guess what the third leg is?
The price, can you say?
What's that? Your pricing is part of it. It's the operation. Who's communicating to the guests? Are you proactive with your communication, or you wait until they come to you with questions? Are you responsive with repairs and maintenance and follow-up? Are you creating good reviews essentially, right, through the experience? So through the operation, are the cleanings impeccable? Or are the floors leaving the bottom of your white socks black when you walk around? You know what I mean? It's like little things like that kill your reviews. That's operations. So one leg of the stool is market research and analysis. You can only do that up front before closing. And then the second two legs after that are operations and the experience that you create through the coordinations. So typically in any pocket of a vacation rental market, your top 5% of units are going to control 40% of the bookings. And you do that through the photo. How many people have rented an Airbnb or a VRBO before? Like those pictures will sell, right? So if the photos are professional, they look great, and the property is finished well, and you create that wow factor, you'll be in that top 5%. If you're not in that wow factor, that top 5%, then you're going to compete on price, and then it's a bloodbath, right? Depending on how saturated that submarket is. So what we're going to talk about today is, of those three legs of the stool, the one that you can control is the market research on the property. So how do we analyze and do the research on a property so we and our clients will know going into the closing there's no room for questioning, or there's no surprises on the back end. Does that make sense? That's what we're going to talk about today. So I'll go into the presentation here, but let me introduce Lucas real fast. Lucas is the short-term rental expert. How many of you saw the flyer to join us this morning at 10 a.m.? How many saw that promotion? Only a couple of you saw it, and you opted not to come? Well, we had a couple of people come. So this morning we had an Investor Agent Accelerator training. That's kind of a foundational training for just agents who want to work with more investors and do more transactions, and do personal flips and deals themselves in custom deal structures or creative deal structures. Today's kind of a follow-up to that event. So if you came here earlier today for the 10 to 12 o'clock, I'm going to repeat some of the things we talked about today coming into the this session from 1 to 3 o'clock. But this is kind of a follow-up from that foundational training. If you missed that, we'll do another one soon, okay? But my name is John Shin, this is Lucas. Lucas is the short-term vacation rental expert. He's going to dive into how he does the market research and where he finds that data. Now keep in mind, when you're doing market research on short-term rental properties, it's like sifting dirt for gold nuggets, right? There's a lot of dirt that you have to know how to sift through. So it's a science and an art. The science is knowing where to get the data. But as everybody in here knows, a lot of the data you're pulling offline are based on algorithms and so forth, like Zillow, Zestimates, for example. It's a good starting point, but it's not conclusive. So the art comes in knowing how to sift that dirt to get to the gold nuggets that are very relevant when you're analyzing a short-term rental property. And then what we're going to demonstrate today is we're going to take a short-term rental property that has 1 or 3 of the legs of that stool missing. We're going to show you what that looks like compared to the same exact floor plan where you have all 3 legs of the stool, and then what does that look like on a short-term rental calculator, which is a plug-and-play document that I'll talk you through, okay? So that's basically what we're going to cover today. You guys good with that?
Yes.
All right. So before we get started, let me get a feel for what experience we have with vacation rentals. How many of you have an Airbnb right now or VRBO that you're managing yourselves, that you're monetizing? You have one? Where's it based, by the way?
Temple Terrace.
Temple
By
Terrace.
Busch Gardens.
Okay, so it's close.
Yeah.
Cool. Anybody else have one? Anybody close with an investor who was buying one recently? Show of hands. Where did they end up buying?
Palmetto.
Okay.
Palm Beach.
Oh, cool. Okay. And have you followed? How long ago were those closings?
A month ago.
August.
August. Relatively new then. Have you followed up to see how they're doing with it? How are they doing?
Good so far.
Okay, cool. So positive experience, right? You get some more referrals. So what we're going to know how to do is, how do we direct our clients to the ones that we know success is inevitable, and we know that referrals are coming out of the transaction? Because what happens if you steer somebody to a property that they've done $50,000 into decorating, and furnishing, and they can't make money with it. You lost that client for life, right? So we're gonna walk away knowing how to find those winners before we even get into the transaction. So, my background, by the way, guys, is I've got 26 years of experience working with investor clients. I got my license when I was in the Air Force. Anybody from the Midwest, Wichita, Kansas, McConnell Air Force Base, right? I was stationed there as a crew chief on the KC-135s, basically cleaning windows and changing tires on airplanes. And while I was in, it broke. I saw an infomercial for the Carlton Sheets No Money Down course. So I bought this course, not having the money for it, and didn't know how to read the course because I didn't understand the terminology as a dumb 19-year-old kid that never bought a house before. So I said, well, maybe if I get my real estate license, I can go out there, I can bring back that knowledge, and now I have a foundation after I take this course and learn how to invest in properties with no money down. I ended up starting selling houses to people in the military. One of the first houses I sold was to an investor. His name was Eddie. He comes into one of my open houses, buys that house right there on Drury Lane for $77,000. The guy pays cash for it, closes in 10 days, no finance contingencies, no spouse to complain about like carpet color and paint and whatever. And it was the easiest transaction I ever did. So that opened my eyes to two things. Number one, what's it like to be a real estate agent, to do much easier transactions and multiple transactions with clients that are looking for money, not moving, right? Not people that want to move every 5 to 7 years. And so, well, maybe this is the direction I want to go. The other thing it opened my eyes to was creating a passive income, what that lifestyle looks like. So Eddie came in with a tattered t-shirt, flip-flops, and bought this property in like 10 days cash, and he owned multiple rental properties, and he had financial independence. So I didn't know what that looked like, if that was even possible. And that's what turned into the assembly line that we created. We flipped about 100 houses a year. We turned off the assembly line the last couple of years because buying has been hectic. And maybe 3 years ago, we bought something that, to use a baseball metaphor, was a double or a triple. In the last year or two, because of like the hectic buying time that we were in, you couldn't get deals. So like that double or that triple was more like a base hit or even a loss. So we shut everything down. Well, now, you guys seeing what's happening in the market right now? We went from, in stellar MLS, 10,000 active listings at any given time with about 16,000 closings a month. That's what, 2 weeks of inventory, right? We saw how that fell for a good 6 months to a year. Then April, we hit a brick wall, and then what happened since April? We go from 10,000 active listings to almost 40,000 active listings in just a few months, as we see interest rates climb. And then the buyers, we're at now, it was 16,000 closings a month. We're now at probably about 2,500 a week or so. So we're down to 10 to 12,000 closings a month, and we have 4 times as much inventory. It's not a buyer's market yet, except when you get into luxury. Luxury, you're over 6 months of inventory already, right? So that's starting to feel like a buyer's market. Sellers aren't in control. But the entry-level properties, FHA price limit and lower, we're still seeing enough demand that sellers are in control, right? And prices aren't going backwards. So that said, how do we become defendable in a softening market? Well, one trick to doing that is to work with investor clients, especially with the type of product that is underserved right now. How many agents, if we lined up 100 agents along the wall, and we had a phone call from a vacation rental investor, said, I'm looking for at least a 5 to 10% return on my money, how many agents confidently can take that phone call and say, I'm going to own this investor for life? Right? Not too many agents can do that. And that's because a lot of agents don't speak that language. We know how to work with first-time home buyers, and people moving houses, and traditional sellers of listings, but we don't have a lot of experience working with investors and talking to NOI language, cap rates, cash-on-cash returns. And that's what we're going to break down today. So more impressive than maybe the 2,400 transactions I've done with investor clients is the properties I've lost money on. Because we have a certification program called the CRIS certification. If any of you are interested in it, I'll invite you to that at the end of today. It's a designation and professional certification called the Certified Residential Investment Specialist, where we teach you everything you need to know and support your career in closing more transactions with short-term rental investors and long-term rental investors, your own flips, long-term rental portfolios, how to fund those deals yourself, right, with your investor clients. Anybody in here come across an address in the last 2 years that they would have flipped themselves if they had a lot of cash to buy it? Right, I see a lot of head nods. How much would you have made if you flipped that property yourself? Anybody want to share? 25, 40,000, 50,000. Those are nice clips to have to walk away from, and all because we weren't resourced or prepared. So, someone said once that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. Now, if we have the right knowledge, we have the right Rolodex, we're working with the right type of clients, we don't miss those opportunities because we have our own high buyer in the back pockets going forward, right? So we just have to know that language. So more impressive than maybe the transactions I've done in my history working with investors is the money that I've lost on about 15 flips, totaling about $400,000, because I didn't have certain checklists in place and documents and analysis tools that we have to have created to prevent ourselves from losing money for our clients and the deals that we do ourselves. Now you can have access to those as Chris said to me, okay? And I'll tell you about that in a second. Who's familiar with this cash flow quadrant on the screen here? Name the book if you can name the book for points. Rich Van Portag, Robert Kiyosaki wrote the book. He wrote a subsequent book called Cash Flow Quadrant, and the point of the cash flow quadrant is he emphasizes, maybe for us as real estate agents, he suggests switching our scoreboard in life, our professional scoreboard, how we measure us doing well or not, from being GCI and sales volume to maybe being how much passive income that am I creating to give me a lifestyle that gives me more freedom and control, right? So right now, all of us measure our success based on, I don't know, how much you sold, like how many transactions we did, yet we're still unemployed. So we gotta look for the next commission. We're on a commission hamster wheel. So when do we get off that commission hamster wheel? We get off that commission hamster wheel when we create a passive income, whether it's a short-term rental property or rental portfolio or otherwise, that exceeds our bills. And a lot of us maybe never took the time to write down, okay, what is my goal? What is my monthly nut to take care of my kids' private schooling or my car payment and my house, my mortgage? What does that monthly bill have to be? So now, if you actually define that, you have a target to pursue so that you can create that passive income for yourself. So Eddie, and I shared this story earlier, Eddie, the gentleman who bought that first brick home from me, he said to me one time, and I'll never forget this story because it resonated. I had a small son at the time. He said, "What is a sin?" And I didn't know what he was trying to get at by asking me that question. He continues, a sin, when you research the origin of the word, means to do something against yourself. Right? And that can be a lot of things. He said, the worst sin you can make is to teach your kids or your grandkids and program them in a way that they believe that trading time for money over their lives is the scoreboard that they're trying to achieve. Right? Like that's a win. When did trading your time for money become a win and the normal standard? If you think about it, right? So today we're going to walk away challenging maybe the assumptions and the perspective we have about our real estate businesses to viewing what we do a little bit differently. I was able to because Eddie taught me that when you trade time for money, you're doing that with a job, right? If you graduate and you get a real estate license, you're trading time for money as a self-employed person. The difference is you get to pick when your 60 to 80 hours a week is going in, right? But you're still trading time for money. That's why when you go on a vacation, it feels like it's a really expensive vacation because you're missing transactions back home. It's not just the lodging and the airfare and all that. So when you move to the quadrants on the right side, you graduate from trading time for money to either having a system that creates money for you, which is business, or you have investment properties creating passive income for you, right? In the short-term rental world, that doesn't necessarily have to be properties you own either, which is really cool. 8 of the townhomes we just adopted that were short-term rentals before completely outfitted, we worked with Greg, one of his clients rented all of those units out for $3,000 a month on 12-month leases to rent arbitrage, right? Everybody know what rent arbitrage is on the short-term rental side? So they're renting them for $3,000 a month. They're going to make $5,000 to $6,000 on these. And guess what their upfront cost was? A security deposit and first month rent. on those 8 units. And now they're gonna be renting them for a spread, because they can optimize, because they have the operations, right? They're gonna put a little bit of money into each one. So that's gonna create a passive income via rent arbitrage without even having to put a down payment or financing a property. This is one example, right? But the goal here is if we switch the scoreboard from, hey, let me chase commissions and sales volume and transactions and GCI to, no, I'm not chasing that anymore. Because that's unemployment. Continual, perpetual unemployment is what we're chasing there, right? I'm gonna chase some kind of passive income that carries me into my bills, so when I'm going after these commissions, I'm having more fun. And it's not a mandate, it's an option. Does that make sense? Especially for us getting a little bit older, and our bodies are falling apart, our eyesight's falling apart, and going, like, we start to get more and more sensitive about having the option to trade time for money versus being mandated to trade time for money. Does that make sense? So, I was able to get there a couple years back, and we started a nonprofit. So for those of you that don't know me, everything that I do is to raise money for our nonprofit. We teach kids how to grow microgreens, delay gratification, become self-reliant, personally responsible. These kinds of values that we're missing today in this generation, because everybody's glued to their screens and TikTok, right? And that's gonna create a lot of problems later. So let's get the screens down, grow some food, learn how to make money by selling that food. And now we create a different type of generation. So we're all about doing this nonprofit. So part of everything that we do with our course, with our training program, our coaching, and with our property management goes towards our Allegro. So that's the big why behind it. So what we're going to get today, guys, we're going to talk about the short-term rental standards for optimal financial performance, what those benchmarks have to be when you're doing analysis on a property, how to do market research and forecast everybody knows what ROI is, right? The return on investment on these properties. Where do we get that data? The language that we use. And I said this earlier when we talked about long-term rental properties. When you see our cash flow calculator that we use, that we're doing our analysis on for short-term rentals, which we're going to demonstrate so that you'll understand the philosophy of analyzing any kind of income-producing property. In this case, we're applying it to short-term rental properties, but it can be applied, the same philosophy and the same language can be applied to a multifamily building, or a commercial strip, or an industrial storage unit complex, whatever. It's all the same language in the commercial world. So you could almost look at today as like an entry door into the commercial language, if that potentially interests you. We're essentially, when we're talking to investors that are financially driven, and with short-term rentals, by the way, the emotional/financial drive is like a fence that these investors are straddling, unlike a long-term rental property or some kind of investment property. Typically, investors that we work with are chasing yield. They're chasing ROI. It's a financial decision. It's black and white off an Excel spreadsheet, and then they move forward or not based on their requirements financially speaking. In the short-term rental world, you have that emotional appeal, right? Because you think about having a place in the mountains that you can use, and when you're not there, it's making money and carrying itself, and that loan's being paid off over time. Or it's on the coast somewhere, or it's by the Mouse's house in Disney World, but you have something, there's like an emotional appeal that comes with that financial performance. So here though, we're going to talk about the language that's used in both long-term rentals, short-term rentals, and commercial real estate. Case studies will compare two of the exact same floor plans that are selling as we speak today. We're pulling properties that are on the market right now. So after we demonstrate them, you can literally go out if you wanted to and sell these properties. Then how to surface short-term rental investors with a simple social media post every week. And then we'll open up for Q&A for everybody. Keep in mind that when we go through any of this information, do we have any brokers in the room? Oh, good, so we can go rogue. If you have a broker that does not want to get sued, and you don't want any black marks on your license, then let's not go out there and pretend to give legal advice and pretend to be attorneys. Let's not talk taxes. We refer everybody to a tax professional, of course, and we also aren't governed by the SEC, right? We're not regulated by the SEC, so we're not financial advisors either. So when we talk about all this stuff, it's for informational purpose only. We always refer our clients to licensed professionals. And If you ever report income numbers on a property, it's always best, by the way, to go to a short-term rental property manager. In that regard, we can always help you out with that. So if you don't want to be on the hook reporting an income or sharing an income projection with an investor, let us do that for you, because ultimately your property manager is going to be on the hook to do that on your behalf. That makes sense? So you're not accountable, but here's what we find all day long. We see salespeople that work for builders and developers, and we see salespeople, external, outside salespeople, pitching incomes like this property on Christmas week will rent for about $3,000, and then they let the client take that times 42 weeks of the year, and then they're expecting that kind of return on the property, right? Like, don't put yourself in that position where you're held accountable to some numbers. Let your property manager do that. We'll even produce these on your behalf for your clients if you need us to, right? So consider us as a short-term rental partner to help you get these investors to the closing table in a way that produces a lot of referrals for you with those investor clients. Does that make sense? So we're here to help you in any way that we can. So we're going to talk about a few different ways to view your business. I call these business frameworks, right? Just ways to consider how you do real estate. One of them, anybody in here know who Peter Thiel is from PayPal? He was a founder of PayPal, made a lot of money when he sold that. He became an investor with Facebook, owns 10% of Facebook, sits on the board with Mark Zuckerberg. He was quoted as saying, there are only two kinds of businesses in this world: businesses with crazy competition and businesses that monopolize, essentially, right? So they have no competition. So we talked about that example earlier where if we had 100 agents lined up, how many were confident enough to work with a short-term rental investor? There aren't too many out there, right? So you have this underserved market that agents aren't catering to and don't know how to cater to and produce referrals from and do it successfully. That's the opportunity that we have in front of us. So is there anything else, by the way, aside from that agenda point that you guys want to get from this training on short-term rentals? Anything come to mind? Nothing? Do you guys just have lunch? I'm feeling slow too. Okay, so all of this, by the way, is one module from the Certified Residential Investment Specialist designation. If you want us in your corner to help you close more transactions with investors, surface deals, find these investors that can help you monetize these deals, and then also use these investors to fund your own flips and your transactions, do joint ventures, we have a whole program for that for licensed agents if you really want to carve out and dominate the residential investment space. And I'll talk more about that at the end, but what we're going to talk about today is the bonus module we have in that program for short-term rentals. So we're going to share some of the best tools with that today. And it's kind of like a foundational conversation because you'll get to understand the philosophy that also applies to long-term rentals too if you guys deal with investors for that as well. So a couple beliefs that we want to manage up front. I think these are investor agent killers, I call these, because they're beliefs that some of us carry with us that prevent us from even wanting to pursue working with investors. The first one is that you need to be really good at math. Anybody here just hate math? Like you just, as soon as you start hearing somebody talk fractions, your eyes roll back to your head and you can start falling asleep. Too many calories are burning in your brain. So as long as you know basic percentages, you can do the math that we're talking about in this program, because the cash flow calculator that we're going to be showing you and demonstrating just requires you to put the inputs in right. If you get the inputs in right, the sheet does everything else for you. You don't have to do any math. Secondly, a lot of agents have a misconception that you have to have done your own personal deals or have your own rental properties for you to have credibility with an investor. Anybody feel that way? Like investor, you know how many, over 2,000 transactions with investors, how many times I've been asked, how many rental properties do you have, Joe? Nobody's ever asked me that, not one time. Over 2,000 transactions ever. It's because if they're asking you that, what they're asking is, so far from what you've said to me, I don't feel certain. I don't have a feeling of certainty about what you're sharing. That's what they're asking, right? But if you know how to speak the language, know what cap rates are, know how to find the deals, know how to analyze them, know how to present them, know how to make them feel safe, know that this deal comes with professional property management, it's going to keep it a turnkey experience for you, all of a sudden they have confidence, they feel certain. They don't have to ask you that question. So if you have the language right, and you do I call it the ugly repetitions, They're uncomfortable repetitions that kind of get you past, like doing a cash flow analysis for the first time, right? And then presenting that to a client. Once you do that so many times, it becomes second nature, and every one you do becomes a lot easier, right? So once you get those repetitions down, it comes out of your mouth, you have conviction, you can look someone in the eyeball, you know exactly, you've done it on multiple properties, so you know what the financial personality looks like, the ROIs on different asset classes, different properties, different parts of town. Then it just rolls off your tongue. And it becomes that second language. Who here speaks multiple languages? Right? Like, is English your second language for any of you? Right? So, yeah, it's tough in the beginning, it's really cumbersome, but then you start to think in English and it starts coming out naturally and it becomes a habit. So, the more you use, if you don't use it, you'll lose it, kind of thing, right? So, you're going to learn today how to think like an investor, how to analyze deals, but you got to do the repetitions and practice it. Otherwise, it'll be exposure you get, and you won't know what to do with an investor. You won't own for life, you won't have those referrals forever. So why don't we work with investors? In Central Florida, and in Tampa, in Miami, we're floating at about, according to the Florida Association of Realtors, 1 out of every 4 transactions involves an investor. You think there's a big portion of those transactions that involve short-term rentals in Florida? A big portion of that, right? Yet, we're spending all of our time focusing on 75% of the market that everybody's competing for. So 75% of the market, who are moving every 5 to 7 years to a new house, everybody's on that lake trying to catch those fish. Meanwhile, 25% of those fish are in this other pond over here and nobody's fishing it. That's the opportunity we have right now. And the buying for smart investors, the buying for short-term rentals the last 2 years has not been good for them. So the ROIs dropped drastically as we saw appreciation go up like crazy because the rents and the incomes on these properties didn't go up as fast as the values did, right? That means that the yield, the ROIs got squeezed. So a lot of your sophisticated investors that do multiple transactions, they stepped out to the sidelines as the buying was hectic. Guess what they're doing today? They're salivating. We're doing the same, right? All of our assembly lines are back up and running. We have marketing full force right now, big marketing budgets. We're pursuing distressed properties, vacation rentals, rent arbitrage, everything that we can find right now because people are in financial pain. So this just kind of reveals what that market looks like, or that opportunity looks like for agents who want to say, okay, I'm not going to maybe disregard my retail business with traditional buyers and sellers, but I'm damn sure going to start preparing and getting ready for that part of the market that nobody's serving right now, right? And some agents, like myself, will exclusively only work with investor clients going forward, right? They just stop working with traditional buyers and sellers. So whether you want to complement what you're doing with investors or just move there exclusively, that's up to you. But this right here is a chart. I call this kind of a spectrum of agents' feelings when the market shifts, right? These are different market cycles, and here's how we feel during those cycles. Where do you think agents are today? Panic, some of them are panicking. We say some of them are created Monster.com logins. They're showing up their resumes again. It's unfortunate, but a lot of agents right now, what we hear most is anxiety and fear. That's where most agents are sitting right now. So, agents, since we were at an all-time low of 1 million agents about 2010, we're at 1.6 million agents today. Only 8% of those agents did at least 5 transactions the first half of 2022. That's not a lot of money. That means 92% of agents, a lot of us in this room, don't have our footing underneath us to do more than 5 transactions in half a year or 10 transactions a year. You're not making enough money. And so what's gonna happen is we're gonna get big tax bills because we're not saving enough for taxes. We're not saving enough money generally. We don't have our emergency funds in place. We don't have enough disposable income because we're all trying to fish on this overcrowded pond for 75% of the market that has 20 people trying to work with them, and they only want to buy every 5 to 7 years. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Right? Meanwhile, you have another part of the market, 25% of the market that nobody's specializing in, that is buying anytime money looks good, right? And their referrals are so much different. You want to talk about exponential referrals, that's where those are coming from. It's not from a customer who only needs you every 5 to 7 years when you move. You guys with me? So it's a way that we become more market resilient. At the end of the day, when you become an investment specialist, you become a problem solver, right? And that's really what being an investor agent is all about. So we talk about investments in properties that you're going to pick up yourself, flips, creative deal structures, rental properties, short-term rentals. But what you're really doing is you're adding tools to your tool chest to serve different types of clients with different market cycles, with different types of assets, right? And you're dealing with clients who are looking for money because everybody needs more cash flow. Everybody needs to make up time for retirement because maybe they lost a lot of money in 2008 or they're getting hammered right now even, right? Their 401ks and so forth. So everybody's looking for more return on their money to get their money working harder for them. And real estate just so happens, short-term rentals and your average long-term rental today, when you account for what are the 4 benefits of owning a rental property that you get a loan on. For those of you that saw this earlier today, we'll let everybody else play. What are the 4 benefits of owning a rental property that you can quantify to your investor clients to make them really excited about buying a rental property? Are you guys fucking here today? Appreciation.
That's a given.
Appreciation. Tax, okay, appreciation, tax write-offs.
Cash flow.
We got cash flow, and then what's the last one? This is a tricky one. Oh, he said principal reduction, right? So even if the property doesn't go up to 1 penny in appreciation, we still make money because the tenant indirectly is paying off our mortgages for us. So that's how we get really rich. So we got some principal reduction. You know, we can put a number to each one of those and say that if you add all 4 of those up, here's how much you benefited that year in dollars compared to the money you put into this investment. That's what we can do with investors. Get really excited. And when you do that, compared to paper investments like stocks and S&P 500, for example, we almost double the net after-tax performance of stocks, especially with short-term rentals. So with a long-term rental property today, anybody have any idea what a good target return would be on a basic long-term rental property today? With today's interest rate, if they get some financing with today's prices and today's rents. A long-term rental property, you'd be good at about a 5% rate. That's a pretty decent property, right? That's if you pay cash. If you get financing, you're barely going to cash flow and you're going to have to put 30-40% down. Because at 8% interest rates, it really eats into your cash flows. So even after tax though, you're going to be at about 11, 12, 13% return on your money. After tax with interest write-offs, appreciation, principal reduction, appreciation on the property, and the principal reduction on the house, right? So when you add all that up, you're still not performing the stocks like a property that carries itself. Now on the short-term rental side, you're double those numbers. That makes sense? But you have a higher opportunity to miss on the short-term rental. So even though you can double those numbers, that only works on a smaller percentage of potential vacation rentals. So it's like either you got to do really well and double the performance of a long-term rental, but more than likely, if you don't do the market research correctly, you're going to put a client or yourself into a property that's going to underperform a long-term rental. And you'll be upside down on your carry on that property. That's going to force you to either have to sell it or reach in your pocket to carry it every single month because you can't make enough money to cover your mortgage and expenses.
So 10% annually is considered a return?
Yeah, about 8 to 10% on a long-term rental is going to be a good return on your money if you pay cash.
Long-term or short-term?
Short-term, sorry, short-term. Yeah, long-term, a 5% is really good on a long-term today. Okay. So with that, I'm gonna let Lucas come up here, and he's gonna talk about market research, what makes a good short-term rental property, and then we're gonna bring in some case studies. We're gonna pull these outside of Disney World in a minute. You guys get people that buy in Disney over here?
Like all that celebration area and
Yeah,
stuff.
celebration area, Davenport, Four Corners.
I mean, you know, a lot of conventions, people renting stuff out there a week or whatever.
Well, if you do come across any, we'll give you some examples out there. Same applies with coastal properties out here. All right.
Hello, everyone's awake. Right? So my name is Lucas, as John introduced me. I kind of fell into this industry by purchasing some properties myself and then managing them myself. John called it a selfish thing to do because I was just doing it for myself, friends, and family. And then a lot of people started asking, like, hey, you know, like, like, we need this. So we kind of dove into vacation rentals, like, at first, craziness, Disney market. I wanted nothing to do with Disney. I absolutely hated Disney. And you know what? A lot of the property management in Disney is done improperly. And there's a lot of, that's why if you look at Zillow right now, and where do you see the most listings in the Orlando area? Kissimmee, Four Corners, Davenport, right outside of Disney. Because all these people who purchase these short-term rentals, Airbnbs, VRBOs, whatever you want to call them, vacation homes, are struggling now because they're just not producing. Now, I don't care which side of the coin you are, but like we're going into a recession, we're in a recession, whatever you want to call it. Do you think people will still travel during a recessionary period?
Yes.
Yeah. Is it going to be the same amount we had, where we have lockdowns in Chicago and no one can leave their homes, so we're going to run to Florida and, try to do whatever we want to do? It's not going to be the same amount of people, right? So we just had a boom of traveling. There's a huge push right now for travel within the United States because it is cheaper sometimes. Frontier Airlines, complete, interesting experience. But you pay $40 for a flight and then you pay $150 for a seat and luggage. It's kind of like anyhow. So Airbnb is a sexy word, right? How many of you have had a customer call you and say, hey, I want an Airbnb, or I want a VRBO, or I want a short-term rental, right? It happens daily. And so everyone wants a piece of it, right? Airbnb, just to kind of go over because we had some questions, Airbnb is a brand, right? It's a search engine, that's all it is. It's kind of like Google, but just for vacation homes. So the ugly truth about all these, I kind of skipped that part, but short-term rentals are a marathon, they're not a sprint. Right, so it takes time to season a short-term rental. It's not like you'll put it on Airbnb and we'll make money overnight. It could, right? You have to purchase right, you have to do the right, market research and gather the right data. There's so much more to it. There's design, there's theme, and as John talked about, there's that experience portion, the operational portion, and the data portion. And so data you can do beforehand. So whenever you have someone reach out to you, the first conversation that you should have is a conversation with a property manager, right? Vacation rental property manager. Because that person will more than likely know the market much better than you, will know the data much better than yourself, and will help you to kind of guide you in that process, right? For us, for example, we don't split commissions with you, we don't sell unless it's for ourselves and our family. We're not gonna, one of the big things that we do a part of our company is we have you in the CRM tied to that client. So when that client decides to sell at some point in time, guess what? We're reaching out to you, and then, you're listing that home or buying another one if you want to purchase another one. But the first conversation when someone reaches out to you should be with a vacation rental property manager. Because we have to, like John said, there's a bunch of trash, and we have to sift through the trash and find the gold nuggets, right? Because, like, for example, AirDNA. Anyone heard of AirDNA? So it's a great tool, and we'll show you in just a second, for getting some research. It costs about $15,000 a year for the United States market, right? It's about $8,000 for the state of Florida. But there's also a free portion of it. The free portion just gives you a bunch of trash. But if you know what to do with it, you can still utilize it. So another kind of important truth about short-term rentals, you can't force the numbers, right? You cannot be emotional about it. When you go to the Disney market, you can go to Lennar Homes or Pulte or Park Square Homes, whenever they sell, these short-term rentals. Hey, you have 8% commission or 7% commission just hanging right there, and then you have the salesperson say, oh yeah, you're gonna make, $450 a night, 95% occupancy. I call bullshit, right? It's not gonna happen, especially, if you don't create the right experience. It's one thing to purchase something and have the structure of the home. It's another thing to create the experience within, to have people. When you purchase a short-term rental, you're going into the hospitality market, right? You're a hotel. That's what you are. So, there's a lot of people that want four-season rates, but they produce a Super 8 experience, right? we have to focus on creating that experience. Experience is the key to being successful within short-term rentals, right? There's a lot of competition with short-term rentals, all right? I'll show you a picture of Kissimmee, and it's insane. In the Disney market, so around Kissimmee, Four Corners, Davenport, Orlando, there's 70,000 active rentals right now, tailored towards Disney and Universal. Some people say, oh shit, that's a shitty market to invest in. I also say bullshit, because you know what, there's a lot of markets around the United States that don't have regulation on short-term rentals, right, that are not established. In Disney, around Disney, we know people come to Disney, number one. We know that, hey, these are the guidelines, these are the rules, these are the regulations within this market, right? So we're not searching to see if it's legal, if we can do this. We already know it's an established vacation rental market. So sometimes competition is good because you know what's working. You can do the market research and see what individuals are being successful at, right? And then you can see what's not working, and those are all the homes that are for sale right now. And you can see, and we'll show you when we do our case studies. So, 4-season rates, Super 8 experience. And that's what, it's the easy way, right? Let's charge $400 a night and put nothing into this home and expect, you know, $500 a night. It's not going to happen. We have to create an experience. Any questions so far? And then, go ahead.
So a lot of the local municipalities are coming up with restrictions for how people are using their properties.
Right.
Is there someplace centralized data where you guys go and look and see?
There isn't, right? So it's calling, you know, so your first step, if there's an HOA, look at the HOA. A lot of HOA docs have been written when that first home was built, 80s, 90s, whatever it might be. So call the HOA, right, find out there, call city, call county. There's a lot of, if you go into Facebook and you type in, let's say Tampa Bay Short-Term Rental Association, or you just Vacation Home Association, find these groups, they're advocacy groups that work on behalf of homeowners, and then you can go in there and there's a lot of people talking about it, right? So there's Florida Airbnb hosts, there's all these Facebook groups, and the great part on these Facebook groups, you can search, and then you know it's your cheat code, right? So you search on Facebook, and someone will tell you, okay, yeah, we've called this place, done this, and this is what we found. So do your research. Doing your research is very important. It will be a really shitty kind of spot to be in when you tell someone, like someone else in Airbnb, you go, they buy a $500,000 home, put $100,000 into it, and then you get a letter from the city saying, hey, no. All the time. Agents are getting sued right now because something like that happened. They said, hey, you can do short-term rentals. Or number two, they quoted incomes. Can we quote incomes from a property as a real estate agent? Everyone should be saying no, because that's one way to get sued really, really quick. You know, just bless you. Even as a property manager, I don't quote income. I quote ranges. I quote data. So I'll siphon the data and I'll show you, hey, this is what another property in this area has done, and this is, you know, based on this, and this information. But there's so much info out there, and so it's an art to siphon through all this stuff to make sure we get the correct things and get the correct information to present to our clients, our customers. So, what is the attractive side? Oh, by the way, if you have any questions, stop me at any point in time. I can talk about this for day in and day night, you know, and I'm a talker. I'll go on tangents. So stop me at any time and ask questions. But what's the attractive side of short-term rentals if they're done right? Well, much higher income potential, right? We'll show you, we'll demonstrate. I'm a part of short-term rental masterminds where people are making millions. When I say millions a year on properties, I mean millions, right? That's net. California coast, you know, these big, you know, 5 million properties, people are bringing in crazy money. Disney market brings in a lot of crazy money. We have some data showing that for the Disney market, some of the best properties you can kind of look at is 10 bedrooms or higher. There's a huge income jump from, you know, when you hit 10 bedrooms and you go up. We don't know why. I mean, baseball teams coming down, families, several families. I guess it makes more sense financially. The second one, appreciation through income. So we'll talk about this when we do our worksheet. And there's going to be a line where you are not compared to, other comps, right? So in real estate, when we try to find the value for a property, we look at comps, right? Well, there's going to be a point where that's an income producing property, right? So we go off the income approach. So therefore, a hedge fund can come in and be like, hey, we just want a 6% cap, and it happens all the time. There's hedge funds out there spending $4 million a week buying short-term rentals right now, right? Well, buying homes that could be short-term rentals. You can't buy established short-term rentals. So, appreciation through income. You have more control, right? With a short-term rental, we have a lot more control. We can, adjust the rates. We can redesign a room. We can do a lot of different things, which gives us control over the potential revenue, right? Long-term rental, hey, someone goes in there at $1,700, guess what? You're stuck at $1,700 for 12 months if they pay, right? We get payment before a person stays. Usually stay a shorter amount of time. Believe it or not, a lot of times short-term rental, like the damage, everyone worries about damage, oh, they're going to ruin my property. A lot of times your property gets taken care of better than on the long-term rental side. On the long-term rental, someone's there 12 months, they get comfortable, they get sloppy, they just constant wear and tear. Where short-term rental people come, if we're at the beach, people go to the beach, right? They come home to sleep. They're in Florida. Why are they in Florida? To enjoy the sun, to enjoy the weather. They're not sitting in your condo or in your house all day, trying to figure out ways to ruin your property. So, personal use. Who would love a free vacation every year? So numbers don't lie, right? You can't be emotional about numbers, and numbers do not lie. So this right here is Kissimmee. Who knows Kissimmee? Been to Kissimmee, anyone? Probably, yeah. All right, so Kissimmee. These are the active rentals in Kissimmee. Just Kissimmee. And there is 29,825 active rentals. So this is AirDNA. And then AirDNA is online software, so it's airdna.co. Do not trust the data it gives you, because you have to go through, right? It'll give you basic data, basic info, basic numbers. If you pay for the paid version, then you have ways to filter that data, which helps a little bit. I don't think it's worth it. Just call me, I'll do it for you. We do have the paid version. So if you ever need any help or you're trying to do some numbers for anyone else, give me a call and we'll go through it. This right here is Champions Gate. Not a lot of competition in Champions Gate, There's not a lot of units there, being sarcastic, of course. Everyone's still sleeping. All right, so the basic income. So we have a few things here for this area right here. So they had 168,000 bookings for this area over the last 365 days. That average estimated revenue over your, 2-bedroom condo to a 14-bedroom villa or home is 59,000. Estimated occupancy is 51%. Average daily rate is $317 at night. And there is, in this area, there's over 8,000 listings.
The 12-month span?
It is, yeah, last 365 days. So based on this information, based on some of the information that we will present to you, we made some projections, right, that we verified when we do these numbers. All right, so the numbers any questions before we go into the case studies?
We're going to break down, by the way, case study A and B are just run-of-the-mill properties that are actively on the market that were previously on Airbnb. So that they're vacation rentals, they're fully furnished, they're great-looking units. We'll demonstrate what the numbers we research pull up those are making, and then we'll put that into a cash flow summary so we can show, Like if you wanted to buy this property as it is, the way it's been performing, here's what the financial performance of it looks like. Then we're going to contrast that to another property, same exact floor plan and model, in the same exact subdivision with the same amenities and everything, same builder. This is what it could be, and look at the income this one's producing based on putting another $150,000 into it, right? And you're talking properties that are about $1 million. So what's another $150,000 to make it work versus not work? And so we'll contrast those two.
That's how we do need to pre-frame those conversations with your investors. It is one thing to buy something. It's another thing to put the money into the design theme, right? I've seen properties have $400,000 worth of design and theme, 11 bedrooms. And that's why that property is performing. It's different. It stands out. When you go to Airbnb and you go on the first page, everyone's like, oh yeah, we see all these cool homes and all these things. Yeah, that's why they're on the first page, because they're cool and that's why you see them. But no one sees the 69,998 other units that are, on page 124 and have zero exposure, right? So the first conversation you need to have, obviously, would be nice to have a property manager, because we'll sit down and be like, okay, here's, what you can make if you don't put any money into it and just take it as it is. Here's what you can make if you put in $150,000 into it. And then you'll see in the case studies, the differences are just insane. So property number one these are 3 similar properties in the area that are currently for sale, right, or were about 2 weeks ago. So 1.1 million, 850,000, and then 950,000. So I think we'll use 900,000 or 950 for the spreadsheets.
950 is what we put.
So subject A is this. Okay. It's all right. I mean, it's not, I call it Instagram worthy, is it? No, not really, but it's not bad. Right? You want to talk about the opposite of good?
Oh yeah, so if you're here earlier today, we talk about the opposite of great. The opposite of great is not bad. The opposite of great is good. Because you think good enough is going to get you there, and it doesn't. So it prevents you from realizing a completely different standard of performance on short-term rentals. These are actually pretty good-looking units, right? Like you can tell that it was all new furniture, all new pillows. I don't know, maybe professionally designed or not, but they look good. You'll see what good gets you in the short-term rental world, though, especially in a hyper-competitive market like Disney. But even in a coastal market, you still have to be in that top 5% to command 40% of the bookings. And great is what's going to get you there. Not so $150,000 more is going to get you there. A $30,000 is not going to get you there, but it'll be good enough. But it's going to make you want to sell the property or turn it into a long-term rental. That's the difference.
What is the number one key of a high-performing short-term rental? I said this word. Experience. Yeah. Remember that, right? When you have these conversations, it's not about what it's done before, it's what it can do. I have this saying that I say to everyone, I'm like, if it's legal, and if you put in the money to create the right experience, I don't care where it is. Well, if it's in Chicken Lips, Arkansas, it's not going to do well, but if it's in Orlando or in Florida, it will perform, right? So, experience, remember that. All right, so this unit here made about $52,000. Right, so that's this number here at 66% occupancy. It was available for 182 days. We've confirmed these numbers, so we're going to go off a little bit of a higher number. So you have to look at that too, like how many days was it available? Like what happened with the unit the rest of the time? Should we double that? Well, a lot of times with short-term rentals, owners will come and stay in the times that no one wants to stay in Florida, right? So they'll use the times, like an owner will come in like, okay, we have 2 months available, September, October. They'll come September, October. September is a really crappy month for Florida for short-term rentals. Kids going back to school, no vacations and stuff like that. Subject B, I think it's a little bit better, but still, it's not Instagram worthy as I like to call it. It's not a Four Seasons, but it's not bad. It's good.
Is it the same price? I'm sorry, I missed the price.
Yes. So these homes go for about 900 to 1.1 million,
Okay.
somewhere in the Disney market. So it's the same floor plan, same. Now, if someone buys a home for 1.1 million, they're making $53,000 43,000 gross. Well, we'll talk about it. So,
Depends.
Yeah, it depends.
46% occupancy, you made about $53,000. So we're gonna pause it here, and we're going to run similar numbers on the property. On the other two, so subject A and B will use, I think, 950,000, and then
Yeah,
we
so
set rates.
to kind of recap real fast, the two metrics that you need, the two numbers that you need for the income on your property are what?
Cap rate and ROI.
Well, you'll produce a cap rate and ROI once this sheet does the math for you. But the two measurements, or the two numbers that drive the income on a property, at least your top line revenue, is your average daily rate and your occupancy, right? So what percent of the year are you getting that thing rented out for the times that it's available? Is it 50%? Is it 75% of the available nights? And then when you do get it rented, what's your average rate that you're getting per day? When you have those two numbers, you can then come into the sheet with all the expenses and plug and play.
And that's something I missed. So this number here is like the average nightly rate or daily rate, however you want to say, moving forward. Right, so they look at the next 365 and what's available, and then they will determine kind of what that average is.
So it's the 46, is that the percentage?
That's the percentage occupancy rate over the last 365.
Okay.
Right, it was available 268 days, and then.
And when he says available, by the way, it's when the switch was turned on and the vacancy light went on in that hotel from the owner saying, hey, on Airbnb, it's available for this night or that night or whatever. So in the top case, you're seeing 182, the third piece of information from the right. It's saying that 182 days of a 365-day year, the owner said, yeah, this is available for people to rent out. Lucas's point earlier was which one were those days? Because you can't just take that 66% occupancy rate at face value and assume that that's what they're getting year round. What if they only made available 4 weeks of the year? Christmas, Easter, New Year's, you know what I mean? And then you show 100% occupancy rate most likely, but that's not, you can't extrapolate that for the whole year, right? So you have to sift, again, this dirt to figure out what the usable, relevant gold nuggets are, and you have to make some conservative assumptions. So in this particular case, if you blend these two, you're at about a 50% occupancy rate on about an average nightly rate of about $450. Do you see that? If you kind of take the two. So,
But are you saying, you've got to look at it and say, hey, they weren't only renting it during the high times? Like,
It could go either way, right? So it could go like, hey, they're only renting it during the high times, or it could go as like, hey, they wanted to use the high times.
Right.
So this software, which we'll talk about, is called Price Labs. It's really a dynamic pricing tool, but it has something called market dashboards that allow you to do research on pricing for a lot cheaper than AirDNA, and I think the data is actually better. So I underwrite my properties with Price Labs. I'll use AirDNA to do the research, just basic, and filter through the data, and then I'll use this to underwrite and make sure that it's, that it's correct. So it's Price Labs. To do a market dashboard for an area for 1,000 listing is $10. For up to 5,000 listings in that area, it's $19.99. But what it's really used for is used for dynamic pricing. So who knows what dynamic pricing is?
But it changes.
Yeah, so
Prices for different seasons.
just like when you're flying, let's say from Florida to Chicago, during Christmas, right? It's not the same as if you're flying, on a random Wednesday in September. It's completely different. Pricing fluctuates and should fluctuate on all short-term rentals daily, just because a Wednesday night is not the same as a Friday night. So the cool part is that the dynamic software actually sells the data on the other side. So they know what the data is based on what they collect from people who use it in different software, and then they sell that data for the $10 or $20 or whatever it is. So this data is actually pretty good, but you still need to know what to do with it, right? Because you get all these numbers and you're like, what's going on here, right? So you have to siphon through all the crap and then get the golden nuggets.
So these two, the ones that are actively listed, you said?
No, so this is just the same floor plan.
Oh, okay.
Same floor plan, same community, actually same street.
Okay.
the short-term rental costs, basically, right?
That's what it is, yeah.
So now we're going to plug these numbers into a calculator and show what the calculator looks like on a short-term rental property. If you're here earlier today, we did a long-term rental property. The calculator is structured the same exact way, so I'll unpack that for you. With all of our tools that we have in the program, and this is the demo, the philosophy and the expenses that go into calculating what you're going to net on a short-term rental, because there's a lot of line items that people leave out when they're calculating a short-term rental income. So when you're looking at our sheets, the sheets break down in three different structures, right? There's three parts of the sheet. On the far left, you have all of the inputs that you're putting in that the sheet then calculates for you. So these are all inputs from top to bottom. The middle section of the sheet takes all of these inputs and says, okay, based on a cash purchase, here's what your income, expenses, and net income look like based on a cash purchase. Then the numbers on the right side, those break the numbers down on a finance purchase. Does that make sense? So it's a very simple structure on the sheet. If you get these inputs correct, everything will be perfect on the output or the presentation. Then it's just a matter of reading it, but you don't have to do any math. You just have to know how to take the income from the property manager, the expenses off an MLS sheet, the purchase price off an MLS. You make some assumptions about the money it's going to take to get the property guest ready and optimize, and then you're off to the races. As long as you get the inputs right, the output will look perfect. So one of the first inputs we want to put in on this one is how many people the property sleeps, because there's certain calculations the sheet does based on how many people the property sleeps, right? Now, when you're doing any kind of analysis, on a financial analysis on a rental property or an income-producing property, there's only three buckets of info that are really important. And then you have debt, and then you have some tax implications, right? But the three main buckets of info you need are what's the price that you're measuring your return against. So what's the total dollars out of pocket to do this, acquire the property, put money into it, renovate it, decorate it, closing costs. What's the total money out of pocket? That's your money bucket. And we're measuring our return against that bucket. Then the second bucket is what's the income it produces. That's your occupancy and your average daily rate. Then your third bucket of information is all the expenses you have to subtract from that income. And then what you have left over is your net income on the property, right? That's on a cash purchase. Then we add another bucket of debt assumptions, and everybody in here knows term, the rate on the loan, and what your down payment is. That's the only three inputs you need for the debt. And then the sheet will show you, okay, based on those debt assumptions, here's what your numbers look like now, right? So we're going to break this down line item by line item and make sure we're all on the same page and show you how easy it is to figure out on a complicated short-term rental property how easy it is to do the numbers on it, right? And then what can you do with something like this? You can actually take this sheet, turn it into a PDF file and attach it to your listings. If it's a listing that's a short-term rental friendly subdivision, HOA or municipality or county, you can take this sheet and figure out, okay, if a 20% down payment doesn't work and cash flow properly based on that income and expenses, then maybe we have to do 30% down or 40% down. That makes a positive cash flow, right, on very conservative assumptions. So you make your down payment adjustments. You can figure out, okay, if it doesn't work at this price, well, what if we buy it at this price? Oh, now the thing gets you to the return you're looking for. So it's like a flex analysis that help you a lot of different ways. But what we always say is that your presentation will get you to the closing table before the property will. Meaning you can take a property that's a home run deal, but if you don't know how to break the numbers down and present it to an investor and give them confidence and certainty, it's not going to get to the closing table. On the other side of that coin, if you take a property that's just an average rental property, an average financial performance, but you know how to present the numbers and make the investor feel certain, that will get you to the closing table, and that'll get you a lot more referrals. So the point here is the presentation is more important than the property. You guys with me? Does that make sense? Okay, so on money out of pocket, what are we looking at here? We're going to take a blend of those three available properties and say $950,000. And you think those prices are going up or down right now?
Down.
They're going down, right? Especially if it's not producing money and they have a mortgage. So We got $950,000 property. Let's say we put $15,000 into it just to freshen it up, odds and ends, after they close, and then they drop another $20,000 in to make sure all the linens are squared away and they have enough forks and plates and dishes and silverware and towels and whatever. And then we have some closing costs here. All in, you see on the right side here, it rolls everything up. It takes these inputs and says, okay, that's a little over $1 million all in. And that's what we're going to measure our return against. So that's our money out of pocket on a cash purchase. Now the income the property produces over here, remember the two inputs we need? What's the average daily rate? We blended those two. One was like 420, one was 460. We just averaged at 450. So we're going to say $450 a night at a 50% occupancy rate. Remember, like Lucas is saying, the first year, 6 months to a year in a short-term rental property, it's a marathon. So the first 6 months to a year is going to look different than the second year. If you're getting really good reviews, if you're pricing it right, and you're getting people to bite and want to make it compelling to want to get bodies into the property, even if you have to take a little bit of a hit on the average daily rate, but it creates a lot of positive reviews and helps you get traction, then it might be worth doing that for the first 6 months. And then the people are, you know what, people, I just left Madeira Beach, right? We were there for Thanksgiving week. Before we left, we booked next year. So, what's that? Yeah, I did. Lucas hooked me up with his vacation rental in New Smyrna Beach, and I show up, I'm like, dude, man, the code's not working. He's like, you're supposed to check in tomorrow. I'm like, fine. So I booked for the following year, though. So now as time goes on, you start to get repeat bookings. A lot of the same people are coming back, right, if they had a positive experience. So you can see your bookings get better and better over time. So your first year is kind of a seasoning period, stabilization period, your review chasing period, and then second half of your first year and your second and third year, they start getting better and better. Does that make sense? So that's what that looks like. So initially out of the gate, let's be conservative year one, $450 average daily rate, then we have 50% occupancy. That means that we're going to gross about $164,000 potentially, but if we're only getting 50% occupancy, that's half of that number. That's $82,000 is what we bring in on this property.
And if you take a look at those two, the 450 and the 50, they're very close to those initial average numbers that we quoted for Champions Gate, right? I think it was 450 average daily rate, and then 51%, I think that's what it said for average for that area. So we were, on track with the average for that whole community, right?
In this example, was it, how many people did it sleep?
16.
16.
Yep.
Is that how those houses slept too? 16, those ones you showed us?
Yes, well, it depends, right? So heads and beds make a lot of money. So the more heads, the more beds, the more heads. So therefore you get
Fold-out couches and.
right. The more pull-out couches, different things. You get bunk beds, and you can get a lot of really creative with a lot of different things.
Okay.
But there is hospitality rules too that say how many. So that a lot of you know, right? That a lot of you know that an Airbnb in Florida, are you required to have a license for that Airbnb?
No.
Yes, you are.
Who's supposed to have a license?
The home is supposed to be licensed through the Florida DVPR. There's a hospitality license. Anything that's transient, less than 30 days, is required to have a license. Now, when you call the DVPR, and you're an honest person, they'll tell you this, well, we really have no way of enforcing this, so most people don't. And if you do get caught, I've seen people get a letter saying, hey, it's a $110 fine and apply for it. The license is $180. Usually takes about 2 to 3 days for a single home. A property management company, or if you own several in one area, you can go for a collective license, or you can have several within one district, and that takes about 7 months, it seems like, but it's like 30 days. But Florida DVPR in Florida is currently backed up significantly.
So,
Getting it?
Yeah, we get it for everything, yes, and yeah, I would, do it right.
Doesn't sound like it's worked it downtown.
Well, here's the thing, if it's up and running and you have applied for it, most places, so Florida, they don't do inspections, they don't do different things. New Smyrna Beach, so you have to apply, it's really weird. So I know New Smyrna Beach really well because I own several in there. And so New Smyrna Beach, you have to apply for business tax receipt, and then New Smyrna Beach does an inspection on your home, and then you apply for Volusia County, then state of Florida, and then the Florida license is completely separate. But there's a lot of different things you should do. Airbnb remits your taxes, your hospitality taxes on your behalf, but VRBO is not so good at it, right? So you have to track them. So if you look at it, you don't have a license, but Airbnb is remitting taxes on your behalf. They're getting the money for your property, so they know that your property is a short-term rental. So you might get caught, you might not. I would recommend just doing it.
So on this property, we bring in $82,000, and these are some of the expenses we have to account for. Everybody knows property taxes. Everybody knows insurance. Everybody knows what the HOA is. So far, so good, right? On a short-term rental property, the big differences compared to a long-term rental property is two things. Number one, you actually got to fill it with stuff and decor and finishes, right? So there's a lot more capital intensive on the front side compared to just a 20% down payment potentially on a long-term rental, and then you're done, right? Because the tenants fill the property. Short-term rental, it's more cash intense up front, so you got to fill it. Number two, there's a lot more, you got to cover the utilities and everything, right? Lawn care, everything's on the owner. So there's a lot more to carry on the property that on a long-term a tenant would take care of. So those are the two biggest differences. So in here we have lawn care, pest control, pool maintenance. We put in a monthly utility. Calculate that based on every day of the month being rented. The sheet will make the modification necessary based on your occupancy rate and discount it accordingly, but you always put in here 100% occupancy. You see that on the right? So you put in the max occupancy in there. So if every day of the month was filled, what would your electric bill look like? All of your utilities combined. Then we have, you can just use the default here, estimated maintenance, it's basically 7% of your revenue. Property management fee, you'll see that anywhere from flat fees to 10, 20, 30, 50% on condo hotels. Ours is 20%. Airbnb fee. Then this cleaning consumable cost, you don't have to fill this out. It does it automatically based on how many people are in the unit. Because you have to replace paper towels and so forth, missing utensils every once in a while, things like that. Then you have operating expenses. So when you add all of that up on this property, you have $60,000 of expenses. That's 74% of your income. You see what the expense ratio is? And on a performing property, if you have property management in place, you'll land between 45 and 50% total expense ratio with a 20% management fee. If you're managing it yourself, you should be about 25, 30%, right? Maybe 35% on the high side. That's if you're optimizing the income on it. It looks really high here because we're getting crappy income, right? Remember that 15 to 20% number I mentioned earlier? This is only at 8%. So of the total money it takes to do this property, which is $1 million, it's only bringing in 8% of that year total gross. We want that to be ideally 15 to 20%. Right?
So would you tell somebody to pass on this?
No,
At
because, no, because we're going to show you what it looks like if you put some extra money into it, how these numbers could be changed on a very conservative basis. So this is as is on a property that's good. Remember, good's the opposite of great. So in this particular case, we're making $21,000 a year on $1 million purchase. That's 2% return on your money. And we can, with short-term rentals, ones that are done right, you should be between 5, 10, maybe even 12%, right, on that number. So that's the standard. Now, if you look at, we'll come back to this with the after tax on the next one, but if you were to put 20% down on this property at today's rates, look what your cash flow looks like. It's right here. You're negative $3,800 a month carry because your loan payments are $5,500 a month on $760,000 loan. So you put $225,000 down on this property. That includes your down payment plus that little bit of rehab and some cash to put into the property to freshen it up, and you're negative $3,800 a month. You're not getting referrals from that client, right? And all you had to do was tell them to put another $150,000 into it and have somebody professional help you do that to really optimize it. Same house, $150,000 more, the personality changes altogether, right? So let's demonstrate what that looks like. Here's the difference in standard. I want to fly through this.
Okay. So same home, same street, same floor plan,
Look at the difference in the extremes.
Hmm.
$10,000 to $15,000 per room, right?
If not more. I've seen 30 to 40. So it's craziness. So this home, you remember what the other ones made? 52, 53, whatever it was. This made 194,000. Now, when we say 194,000, we've seen homes make a lot more, over 300. We just didn't want to use the top of the market as an example. So this one made 194,000, 71% occupancy rate, average daily rate projected moving forward is 910, but what it's been over the last year, $752.
But that's 910 divided by 16 heads.
Yeah, same thing.
Unless you want that.
So now we're gonna go back.
Well, it depends, right? So if you do bunk beds and different things, you can adjust those numbers. Just stay within the hospitality limits, but we can talk about that offline.
So now let's take a $750 a night rental. Everything else is the same except our two income inputs. So we're now at $750 a month. And like Lucas said, there was a lot of properties, that same floor plan and model that we found on Airbnb that were even outperforming it. We didn't want to take the extreme though, so we just took something on the top tier. So $750 a night at 70% occupancy, it's gonna take an additional $150,000 for this, so let's change this to 170. And watch what happens to the numbers. We just change those three inputs. That's what this change makes. It's like a night and day difference. Now look on a cash purchase. We're now back to where we should be on expense ratio, about 50% expense ratio with the property manager in place. So you're making 191,000 and you're at 99,000 expenses, that's leaves you 92 grand a year. Now you're 8% return on your money if you drop $1 million on this property. You guys see where we got that? Because your net income is about 8% of 1.16 million now, because we put another 150,000 into it, right? To get it to that standard of experience. Now, if you couple that experience with good property management and an operation that's done well, that communicates well, gets you good reviews, now you're just off to the races, right? And so that's what that looks like. Now, if we get financing on it, how does that look with 20% down? We're gonna be out of pocket under 90,000 for our down payment. The bank comes to the table with the 760. We add $5,500 a month, same payment, same expenses, just different income. So now we're actually netting $2,000 per month on a lot less money out of pocket than $1 million. So we're out of pocket $375,000. That includes the 20% down on the 950 purchase price plus our rehab plus our design and closing costs. That's $375 out of pocket. You're making about 7% return on your money. That's after your principal and interest payments. But here's where it gets really attractive. Look how much write-off you get on this property between depreciation and interest. $84,000 write-offs. If you're paying a 24% tax rate, which is a very conservative tax rate, most of your clients are going to be above that. What they feel in tax benefit is 20 grand. This investor would pay 20,000 less in tax by owning this property versus not owning it. Forget about all the other benefits, right? So $20,000 of tax benefit, $19,000 of cash flow after tax. The principal first year, we know that the principal reduction first year is the lowest you're going to see in the 30-year AM, right? So that principal reduction just the first year was $6,300 that the guests help us pay down that mortgage. So you got $6,300 of equity you didn't have before. And look at the appreciation on this. What percentage is $120,000 of appreciation? Is that realistic?
Not really.
Not really. If you're going based on how do we value properties per the real estate practices guide? There's three ways to value a property. We can value it based on comparables. That's how appraisers underwrite most of our properties that we sell, right? They can do the cost approach, the replacement cost to rebuild the property. But then what's the third way? The income approach. So on the income approach, you're basically saying that, look, if I have somebody out there that they want a 7% return on their money, where are you gonna get, first of all, a 7% return on your money right now? Whether you wanna do a multi-family building, a storage unit complex, most of those are trading at like a 5 cap, right? 6 cap even. That's friendly. You can't find a 7% cap rate or return on your money. So if you have a buyer out there, and there's plenty of them that are looking for a 7% return on the money, and I wanna have a vacation I can use 2 weeks out of the year in this knocked out gorgeous place with my family and our friends, if they're looking for a 7% return, they can pay you $1.3 million for this property that you have this much into, 1.16. They'll pay you 1.3 million to achieve a 7% cap rate on the property. So if you revalue the property based on an income approach to value, in commercial world, you call that recapping the property, because you buy an apartment complex at 60% occupancy at $90 at a $900 rent per unit, and you're able to take it to a 90% occupancy at $1,200 per unit. That optimizes your income, and now you can sell that property at the same cap rate for a lot more money, right? Because the NOI is a lot higher. So short-term rentals, the only properties you can do that in the residential world. You can't do that with long-term rentals, right? So that's one of the benefits you have, huge appreciation potential, and we call that value arbitrage, because you can just optimize the design, the decor, and or the operation, and get control of the expenses, which ultimately increase the net income on the property, and revalue the property based on a return that you can give somebody.
How do you determine your average daily rate?
You do your research.
You get Lucas to do your research for you, so you can sit down. There's a lot of tools you could use that are cost effective, you know, Price Labs, Rank Breeze, which is an optimization tool, but it can still pull the same stuff down. But just get with me and I can walk you through some of those.
So in this property right here, let's quantify the 4 benefits of owning an income producing property with financing in place. You got your tax savings, your cash flow, the equity build that you got from the loan principal reducing over time, and some serious appreciation based on a very conservative cap rate. There's probably buyers out there that are looking for a 6%. If you have somebody that'd be okay with a 6% return on their money, now you have $295,000 in appreciation. You see how that works? So, and there's buyers all day looking for a 6% return on their cash. If you can prove to them over a couple tax returns, and here's my P&L for this property, you're making that all day long, right? So that's the power of doing a short-term rental property right. The only difference was we completely changed the experience by putting the proper money into the house so that you're not competing on price anymore. Before, those properties are competing on price, and now you have a different type of person staying in that unit as well. It's as many families that can get together to get, and they're calculating how cheap it is per family to get into that building, right? Versus somebody who wants to pay a premium for an experience. That's the difference 150,000 made in this example. So the point here is that if you're going to be working with a client, do the market research to show that there's a capacity based on comps that you can even get there to that 15 to 20% mark. And then secondly, what has to be done to that property to fully optimize it so you can get to the 15 to 20% mark, assuming we can even get to that with that asset. You guys with me? That's basically all we're trying to assess here. And now you can show it in black and white to a potential investor. Okay? You demystified all the numbers, and you put that burden on your property managers back to fulfill on that promise. You just make your commission check and collect all the referrals.
Florida,
That's what you just said.
yeah.
Florida on the property manager's back, I like that.
Florida is a very forgiving market too. So like, you know, even if it's purchased wrong, in Florida you have a higher chance of making it right, just by design theme, just because the amount of people traveling to Florida and their weather, you know, that helps.
So I'll blast through this. So some of the resources, you just kind of go very quickly through.
Yeah, so I'll just talk about some of the, so there's 3 different resources that I would recommend. AirDNA, there's free version, so airdna.co. So you can just go in, watch a YouTube video, and then you can look up what actual Airbnbs are in the area. There's Price Labs that I talked about a few times. If you own a short-term rental, you should be using Price Labs or something similar for dynamic pricing. Do not use Airbnb Smart Pricing. It is terrible.
Are you saying labs like LABS?
Yes, LABS.
Oh, I thought you said laps.
No, labs, sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'm Polish second language, right? So you gotta bear with me. Rank Breeze. So Rank Breeze is a tool used for optimization and tracking optimization, but they have something really cool, and it's this button here, right? So you pay for Rank Breeze, then you get these like add-on or whatever you call it for Chrome, and then it will show you this. Now, this is only as accurate, you know, this is just a 40,000 foot overview kind of what it could be. I've seen it be very correct, I've seen it be completely off, so just take it for what, you know, for what it is. So if you have any questions, reach out to me at any time.
So when you said do not use,
Airbnb. So I said do not use Airbnb smart pricing. It's getting into like in depth, but Airbnb smart pricing works on behalf of Airbnb, not the person whose property it is. Airbnb is just like Google. You have to optimize your property, and you have to do so much to make sure that you stand out and you rank up. You know, if you look at any market, there's hundreds of pages. It's just like if you go to Google and type in, you know, who's the best realtor, what's going to come up, right? Person, a lot of times, will optimize their account, search engine optimization, a lot of different things. So, same thing with Airbnb.
So you guys feel a little bit better coming out of this, understanding how to analyze a short-term rental property and what makes one work, right? The most important thing is just avoid the losers out there. That's half the battle, is knowing how to do the market research up front to avoid those dead-end properties that aren't going to serve you or your clients. Once you have that, it's very easy. And then it's easy to optimize those clients. I say optimize those clients when you're selling money, referrals come so much faster. Because it doesn't matter if somebody, if their friends or relatives or coworkers are moving or not, they can turn into people that want to do what they just did to create more wealth. Like, that's the big difference. So, at the end of the day, what you're selling is a turnkey wealth building system. Your wealth building system, we don't sell houses. If you're just selling houses, you're getting left in the dust by somebody who is actually selling a system. High net worth clients, they want what? They want service, they want the whole shop. They want that one-stop shop. That one-stop shop when it comes to vacation rentals is everything you need around the property, not just the address. So we call that your turnkey wealth building table. That's 4 legs of the table. You have the lawyers and the CPAs that handle your tax filings. How are they going to take title to the property, set up their LLCs and so forth, asset protection, estate planning. Your lender who specializes in products that are untraditional. If you want to send somebody who's buying an income producing property that's a business owner that doesn't qualify for traditional financing, that has a lot of cash order, you want to send them to your traditional lender that works with buyer seller? No, they might be better off with a non-GMO type product to buy this asset in, right? And with short-term rentals, you can get a lot more creative with the products they pick because they perform so much better, so they're more forgiving on higher rates, right? Which is really nice. So your property manager, of course, is going to generate the referrals for you if they have a positive experience. So if you ever need anything, then all of you get the QR code for for the short-term rental property management company. If you didn't, just keep Lucas's phone number right here, put him on speed dial, hit him up for relationship advice at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Second job is Uber.
He's a good listener. So if you get this number down and you just have somebody on speed dial for your short-term rental assist, just give him a call, ping him. We respond quickly by text messages, really fast by text messages. And a lot of times, if you're dealing with somebody who has a short-term rental, the first step is to do a rental assessment. We meet them at the property, we walk the property with them, and we do a full audit and give them kind of a report card on their specific property. Okay? Something to keep in mind. So we're here to help you any way that you can. I'll share with you, for those of you, I know some of you are in the room are already CRIS agents as it is. I say CRIS, that's short for Certified Residential Investment Specialist. But if you want to come into the tribe here and get your formal designation and join some of the support mechanisms that we have in place to help you close more transactions with these investment clients and actually capitalize on deals and raise money, here's what we do for you. What's that? So one of the tools obviously is a flip analyzer. So in addition to your long-term rental analyzers, remember everything's about presentation. What are you putting on your social media? Right? All you have to do is pick a deal of the week, plug those numbers in 2 minutes into a cash flow analyzer, take a screen capture and throw it on your social media. If you wanna do a recording of it and actually present in a video form, even without you on the webcam, because you just do a screen capture video, then now you're narrating a property, here's what you're putting into the property, it's gonna make this much income at this monthly rent or whatever, and after your expenses, here's what you're netting on the property, if you get some financing with 40% down, you're actually making after tax with all the benefits, 15% return on your money. If you're looking for an inflation hedge, if you're looking for a way to build wealth to make up lost time for retirement, or if you want some more cash flow, give me a call. Right? Very simple presentation that you can do. If you're doing that every single week, you think you can service some investors?
Yeah.
Like, you're not waiting for people to move now. Anybody looking for something to stop the pain on the stock market losses they have and the park cash is gonna find you, right? Especially in a climate where there's perceived discounts coming because the market's softening. So the presentation is more important than the actual product. So this is the flip analysis. We have plug-and-play calculators for flips, for rentals, for raising money, for doing seller finance wraps, all kinds of different tools for you. And we walk you through how to use those. In the beginning, don't be intimidated by all the different tools. We talked about Mr. Wolf, Winston Wolf in Pulp Fiction, who shows up and solves problems. You don't have to have like 20 clubs in your bag at the beginning. Maybe a short-term rental club, because you know how to do that analysis. Maybe a long-term rental analysis, you start with those two. Then you know how to do seller financing. Then you learn how to do a subject to acquisition. Then you learn how to raise private money and present a flip. Those clubs you accumulate over time, but if you don't start anywhere, what's that gonna cost you? We all talked about addresses we came across that we didn't take advantage of because we didn't know how to do it, right? We didn't have a network with resources of cash. That's gonna cost you more than this opportunity costs you just to get your designation, right? So, the private money brochure, we channel everybody who potentially you have talked to. There's probably people you can think of right now you've worked with in the past that if you found a really good flip and you know how to present it to them, make them feel safe investing in it, they probably put up to $300,000, right? How do you present something like that to make them feel safe and give them a plan A, plan B, and plan C, and this is how you're not gonna lose money. So we get that money on deck with the private brochure that you can present to them and rebrand with your logos and so forth, and we put them on a reservation form. So what we don't do is we don't sell houses when we're working with investors. How do you separate a serious investor from a curious one? How do you do that now? A serious buyer from a curious buyer. You just hope that you qualify them right. Do any of you do an exclusive buyer agency agreement? Or are those pretty impractical? Nobody's gonna sign an exclusive buyer agency agreement, right? So in our world, what we do is, if you're serious, here's the problem. And I'm talking to you like you're a potential client. There's way more of you and there's a lot more money out there than there are really good deals to either fund or buy as rental properties or buy as flips. So how do we create a fair way for you to get access to those properties? If you're serious, you can put up a $5,000 completely refundable deposit. It's held at Red Door Title with a one-page escrow agreement that says you get 24-hour first look at anything I come across before I publish it to my networks or my social media. Now what happens when two investors want the same house? In that 24-hour period, what do you do?
Whoever put the money first?
Yeah, it's whoever's deposit came into the title company first, because they're all time and date stamped. You see what that just did? So now we can do a Zoom call with you and your clients. Instead of you waiting for investors to see your social media posts and come to you, we can go find them. How many of you have CRMs and databases with past people you've worked with or potential clients in the future? You think anybody in that database would respond to a live Zoom call that I'll present on your behalf that says, real estate in the recession, how to profit from distressed properties in the Tampa area? I'm curious. So we just did it last week with a group in Keller Williams, 2 guys brand new to the business. We got 3 reservation forms for that one phone call. 24 people showed up. 20 of them were agents in their own brokerage from the Keller Williams call. Right? The other 4 were actual investors that some of those agents brought on. So the agents were as curious as the investors were. Right? So we'll do those on your behalf. We do them every Wednesday at 12 o'clock if you're certified. So we're going to help you we're here to help you close more transactions. But you gotta know how to find those deals, you gotta know how to service those investors, and we make that success in that for you. So if you wanna record presentations, we show you how scripts on how to take that presentation and turn it into a 2-minute talk into a webcam with free software to create a video for your social media. And you guys received the weekly absorption update? How many of you have gotten that? So every Friday we publish, and you'll start getting it on your text messages if you register for this event. We send out, here's what the market's doing, how many active listings we see this Friday on Stellar MLS, how many sales have occurred or are occurring on a weekly basis. So if you divide how many active listings by the monthly sales pace, that shows you how many months or weeks of inventory we have. You know, we went from 2 weeks of inventory 4 or 5 months ago. We're now at almost 4 months of inventory. That's crazy in just half a year. It's nuts, right? So that dynamic picture, that trend, is very relevant for investor clients. Are you putting information out there that's going to be relevant for investors and make you look different, right? It's all about that positioning. So we'll give you some tools for that. We have our Thursday coaching calls. So if you have an address you want to bring to us, bring us the address. We had an agent just last week. She's brand new to the business, probably done 2 transactions in her life. One of her clients bought, or Opendoor bought their property, their listing, and then Opendoor fell out of contract, because that's what Opendoor are doing right now. They're just falling out of contract left and right. And they're not honoring those prices, so they're sneaking out on their inspection periods. We came in, we bought the property, got it under contract. She's gonna make the full commission on the front side. We're gonna rehab it and give her the commission on the back side. She made 2 commissions out of a Wall Street transaction, right? Just for having somebody to lean on when she needed help. That's what we are. It's kind of like your easy button in case you need someone to evaluate a deal. We talked earlier about Greg's properties that we packaged for seller financing. He took one house he couldn't get sold it for full price with seller financing by restructuring the terms to appeal to a big part of the market that doesn't qualify for financing, that doesn't want to go through traditional underwriting, right? And then not only did they buy that one property, they bought 2 more of his properties. So how many, again, there's another club in the back. So you're gonna have 20 years from now, 1 year of experience 20 times because you never really did anything different, or you can actually accumulate clubs over that 20-year period and actually be a different kind of problem solver. So anyway, if you want to make big money at big sales events, we do big events across the country and in different countries with investors who need to get their money out of their countries, or they're in New York, or they're in California, and it's a crappy place to buy investment properties. It's bad landlord-friendly state because of tenant protections. Real estate's super expensive. The rents aren't proportionally as high as the purchase prices, so they get no yield. Meanwhile, we can take the dog and pony show, recession and real estate presentation, and show them how to buy properties in a place where they can buy 3 houses for the price of 1, and have landlord protections, not tenant protections, right? So we have that, we'll do that presentation on your behalf if you can get an audience. And we have a template on how you take big audiences and turn them into reservation forms, where you're having parties with people as they're coming in, and you're just having a lot of fun, right? So it's a really fun place to be. And like I said, the friends, coworkers, and relatives of your investors, it just spreads like wildfire when we start a few of them. So the way the program works, it's an online video course. You work at your own pace on 8 different video modules. And the bigger value of the course, outside of the tools and the content that you're watching online, is the 3 calls that we do every week. The live Zoom event on Wednesdays for your investors. So anytime, 3 weeks from now, you come across an investor, they say, oh, what can you offer me in Central Florida? Or in Tampa, greater Tampa area. Why don't you come on to the Zoom call and you can hear what a long-term rental looks like, a short-term rental looks like, what a flip looks like, and what funding and deal looks like. And we'll help you package all of that if they come to the table. We close them on a priority reservation at the end. So you start collecting reservation forms. How would you like to go into next month with 5 reservation forms, $25,000 in deposits and escrow? Just wait for people who want you to buy them something, right? That's what the difference is. So it's an online investment of $997. We're actually selling it for $3,800 across the country starting in 2 weeks to a marketing agency. But selfishly, we have reasons to work with you locally. So if we're doing deal flow together, if we're lending you money, if we're helping you close transactions, or get you a management contract on the back end, there's an incentive in place for us to make it as easy as possible for you to do the program. So if you want your professional designation, you want the online course, you want to jump into all our calls when you think you're going to need them, whether it's every week or not. And one of the most important calls right now, guys, we're doing on Monday mornings from 9 to 11 o'clock. It's our prospecting call party. We're literally showing you how to pull lists of distressed property owners, how to skip trace those lists with the best data out there, how to turn them into a dialer, and how to pound the phones, and then what to say to those people to turn them into listings, property management referrals that you can monetize, and or deals that you can get under contract. And I literally am making those phone calls every Tuesday, every Monday morning. So you're starting off your week with the most dollar productive thing you can possibly do. You produce one listing or deal out of it, pay for the designation. See what I'm saying?
How long does it take to earn the designation?
You get the designation as soon as you finish the course, so it's about 30 hours of the course, yeah. And you do that on your own pace. Yeah, you don't have to have that shit to go through it. But we have 4 modules we're uploading as we speak, so everybody's a founder right now. And if you go to chrisagent.com, you can just type in the discount code founder 1130, that's today's date, guys. So it's good until midnight. So if you want the half off, it's founder 1130 at chrisagent.com. You get a 30-day no money, no risk guarantee, and the short-term rental module is being added to the program, so you have that calculator we just showed you today, as well as the long-term rental calculator and the flip analysis as well. And then we're going to show you how to talk to distressed property owners. We have a 5-point conversion conversation. You want to take a property owner who's missing payments on their mortgage, and that audience is growing right now, and you want to get them to trust you and go to contract with you or list with you. You take them through a 5-point conversion conversation that will break down for you, and it'll tell them what their future's going to look like and why you're the best option for them, right? So those are the 2 bonus modules that are coming with the program. So that pretty much includes what we're going to talk about on the short-term rental side, guys. The short-term rental world is really exciting right now. You just have to be very careful not to get into like the dangerous waters with the 80% of them that aren't going to work for your clients. Right? So the market, it all starts with the market research, and you can lean on us if you don't ever want to look at an Excel spreadsheet. Just give us a call. So, thanks a lot, guys. We're going to hang out with questions. Did you tickets, parking tickets, guys. Did you guys have your, not parking tickets, but your
Parking pads that you got when you went underneath the card.